What is up, guys? So since it is the last day of 2018, I wanted to look back on the year and go over all the superhero movies of 2018 and rank them. I was going to do a top 10 movies of the year like I did last year. Last year I did top 5, but I looked at all the movies I saw and I didn't really see that many non-superhero movies, so I just thought I would rank the actual superhero movies. This list will include every movie that was released this year that is connected to Marvel or DC, as well as things like The Incredibles 2, which is neither, but it is still a superhero movie. This also includes straight-to-DVD animated movies from DC, although I didn't see all of them. I didn't see Batman Ninja because I tried to get through it. I just couldn't. It was so bad. So for all intents and purposes, that is in last place. But I think Marvel also released an animated movie that's straight-to-DVD called Marvel Rising, which I did not see either. So all the superhero movies that I did see this year are going to be included in this video, including the straight-to-DVD animated movie. So with that in mind, let's go over every single superhero movie of 2018 and rank them. Also, keep in mind that this is going to be my list and my personal opinion. You will definitely disagree with me at one point, so leave your list in the comments down below. And also be warned, this video will have minor spoilers to all of the movies on this list. So if you haven't seen any of them, either you can skip when I'm talking about it, or you could just go watch it and come back to this video. So without further ado, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and let's get into the video. Number 12 is Batman Gotham by Gaslight, which was, I'm pretty sure, the first superhero movie that was released this year, so not a very good start for this year, at least for straight-to-DVD releases, because this movie was pretty mediocre. It follows, and it's basically an adaptation of the Elseworlds version of Batman, which is a steampunk Batman, and it's called the same name, which is Batman Gotham by Gaslight, which is fine, but this movie used that concept, and I don't really like that concept. I mean, it's such a boring version of Batman. The entire time I was thinking that just a regular Batman movie would have been so much more interesting, because if you're just gonna make an Elseworlds version of Batman, you have to make him at least interesting or more interesting than Batman. Here, it's just a less interesting version of Batman, so I really couldn't shake that feeling the entire time. That being said, this movie does have some good action, the characters are not bad, and there is a twist at the end that is different from the comics that I didn't see coming, so that was all good, but it's still a pretty boring look at Batman. I will give this movie a 5 out of 10. Number 11 is Venom. So Venom was actually better than I expected it to be. My expectations for this movie were so low after the concept of the movie was told to us. The fact that they made a Venom movie without Spider-Man at all, I was just not anticipating this movie whatsoever, and the trailers didn't look very good. So this movie, my expectations were low, and they kind of exceeded them. That being said, it's still at number 11 because it didn't really exceed it by that much. Sure, the movie is definitely entertaining. Tom Hardy's pretty good in the role, and Venom definitely looks pretty cool, but this movie's also, it has a terrible script, and the main villain, Riot, is basically one of these villains who has the same power as the hero. Also, his motivation wasn't fleshed out at all. He looked incredibly bad, and they barely changed the color between the main hero and the main villain, so that was not good. But by far the worst part of this movie is the fact that they made a Venom origin story that didn't include Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a pivotal character in a Venom origin story, to the point where he's the main character of that story, but here you have a Venom origin story without Spider-Man. I hate that concept. It didn't work in my opinion. I would give Venom a 5.2 out of 10. Number 10 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. So although this movie is actually pretty funny and it has a great relationship between Scott and Hope, as well as the action is great, the movie is just largely entertaining. The fact that it is so low on the list is because of the fact that the movie is kind of pointless to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which would be fine. Not every movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe has to be so significant, but the fact that it came out after Infinity War, I wanted something more from the movie that came out after such a huge event in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that it just felt very unsatisfying in this timeline, which is unfortunate because this movie has a lot of things going for it. Although on top of that, the villain's kind of lame. The movie doesn't really have any plot, and they don't really do anything new with Scott's powers or Ant-Man's powers. If they saved Giant Man for this movie, it probably would have been a little bit better. So I will give Ant-Man and the Wasp a 6.5 out of 10. Number 9 is Teen Titans Go to the movies. So first of all, this movie has absolutely no plot whatsoever, and the plot it does have is ridiculous, like completely and utterly ridiculous. There isn't really any character development whatsoever. There's nothing like that. But where this movie succeeds, and it succeeds a lot, it succeeds like really, really well, is the comedy, and that's what they were trying to do here. The comedy was on point. I think it works a lot better if you're a fan of DC and comic books in general, because there are so many references to DC Comics as well as Marvel Comics, like all these inside jokes for comic book fans and fans of superhero movies and TV shows, and it works really, really well. It's very, very funny. On top of that, the action in this movie is surprisingly exciting. The animation and the action is so improved over the show. That being said, this is Teen Titans Go, so it does follow a lesser version of the Teen Titans. It's not a great movie by any stretch of the word, but what it is trying to succeed is be entertaining and funny, and I do think it succeeds at that. I will give Teen Titans Go to the movies a 7.3 out of 10. Number 8 is Incredibles 2. So The Incredibles came out when I was 3 years old, and it definitely was a movie I loved as a kid, and I always wanted a sequel, and they finally made one with Incredibles 2. It took them 14 years, but they finally did it. Now, is this a worthy sequel to The Incredibles? Maybe not. It's nowhere near as good. The villain is not even close to as good as the Incredibles movie, and this movie doesn't really try anything new compared to the first Incredibles movie. That being said, the animation's obviously improved, the action's incredible, pun intended, and this movie is really, really funny, and that's mostly because of Jack. Jack was so funny in this movie, and he was easily the best part of Incredibles 2. That being said, this movie is a little disappointing compared to the first movie, but I will give Incredibles 2 a 7.8 out of 10. Number 7 is Black Panther. So Black Panther is nowhere near as good as the critics said back when it came out. They gave it a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, which it does not deserve, or I mean, it's just not that good. Black Panther obviously offers one of the best villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Killmonger, and Claw is pretty great as well, and the concept or the world of Wakanda is so fascinating, and they do explore it rather well in Black Panther, but sadly this movie, the Black Panther himself is so boring compared to how he was in Civil War. I think that as a character and the actor himself didn't do as good a job here in the movie, and the fact that they gave him these kinetic abilities and the kinetic energy abilities, I really, really don't like that. And obviously the worst part of Black Panther is the disgusting CGI. So not a great movie, but it is still a solid movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I will give Black Panther an 8 out of 10. Number 6 is Deadpool 2. So Deadpool 2 is a pretty worthy sequel to the first Deadpool. It's maybe even funnier. It's not as good because outside of the comedy, there are other things that are not as good, but the comedy is maybe even better than the first Deadpool, all the references and everything like that. I mean, I don't really know how to criticize comedy that well, but I do think this was a rather funny movie. The action is pretty good, and the movie ends with probably the best end credit scene in movie history from what I've seen. So it's a pretty good sequel to Deadpool, and I will give this a 8.1 out of 10. Number 5 is Suicide Squad Hell to Pay. So this is a movie that I'm guessing not all of you have seen. It is a straight-to-DVD animated movie, but it is so high on the list because I genuinely think it is a great movie. I think DC knocked it out of the park this year with not only their straight-to-DVD movies, but just movies in general. Aside from Gotham by Gaslight, this movie is a great, great Suicide Squad movie. I mean, it's so much better than the one released in 2016 because there are actual compelling characters like Deadshot and Bronze Tiger, and the R rating serves the team so incredibly well. This movie is not afraid to kill characters off. I mean, significant DC characters, and it just comes as such an unexpected surprise. And speaking of unexpected, there is a twist at the end that is so unexpected. It plays so well into this universe, and I love it. The villains are great outside of the Suicide Squad. Just, it makes me so mad they couldn't do something this good, or at least almost this good, in the DCEU back in 2016. So I will give Suicide Squad Hell to Pay an 8.7 out of 10. Number 4 is The Death of Superman, another straight-to-DVD animated movie from DC. Again, they knocked it out of the park this year, and this storyline, The Death of Superman, has been so played out in not only the movies but in the comics as well, because in the movies they've done it twice before, back in 2007 with a pretty decent Superman Doomsday movie, and then in 2016 they did it horribly with Batman vs. Superman, but now in 2018 they did it incredibly well, easily the best version of this story. This movie is complete with an incredible portrayal of Superman. They really did a great job at making me at least care about this character and his death at the end. This movie has incredible action. The emotional moments really hit hard. The animation is great, and the way they use this universe with this movie, I just love it so much. It's also a very faithful version of this comic book, and it works so incredibly well. So I will give The Death of Superman a 9.3 out of 10. Number 3 is Aquaman. So I wasn't actually really excited for this movie. I didn't really like Arthur Curry in Justice League, and then the trailers came out. They didn't look very good. The reviews came out, and it was pretty mediocre. I mean, they gave it a 64% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not great, but I'm going to say this movie surprised the hell out of me. It is so visually pleasing. They use the settings of Atlantis and Sicily and wherever they go to so incredibly well. It's very funny, very entertaining, completely comic book accurate. All the costumes, Black Manta, Aquaman, Ocean Master, Mera, these costumes are the most comic accurate costumes I have ever seen in a movie, and it is amazing. And this movie also has this hero's journey for Aquaman that is just so badass. This movie is so good that it really made me love Aquaman as a character, and I'm so happy to say it, but DC finally knocked a movie out of the park with easily the best movie in the DC Extended Universe, in my opinion, Aquaman. And I will give Aquaman a 9.5 out of 10. Number 2 is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse has such incredible animation. The animation is legitimately stunning. It's so creative and so unique and so comic book inspired. It looks insanely good. This movie is also really funny. It has such great Spider-Man references in the movie, and if you tell from this list, when there are references used in a comedic way in all these movies, it works so incredibly well. This movie also has really compelling characters and dynamics between these characters, great emotional moments that hit pretty hard, and a very well executed concept. That last one is not to be taken lightly whatsoever, because on paper, the concept of this movie is so incredibly bloated. They had to introduce to us 6 different Spider-Men that are not only different from each other, but some of them are even completely different from their comic book counterparts. They had to introduce to us this world and all the villains in this movie as well as have Miles Morales as the main character without all these characters overshining him and without making all these characters look like idiots, and they pulled it off so incredibly well. They introduced all these characters in such a great and creative way. Miles Morales is easily the best part of this movie. He is the main character of this movie, and yet none of the other Spider-Men feel like they don't know what they're doing. In fact, they know what they're doing more than he does, but in this situation, the movie calls for him to be the main character, and it's just genius how they did it. So there are some problems, like the villain is underdeveloped and slapstick humor is used a little bit too much, but in general, those are minor things, because this movie is such a good, creative, unique, beautiful movie, and they pulled it off so incredibly well. So I will give Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse a 9.6 out of 10. Number 1 is, without a doubt, Avengers Infinity War. It's kind of insane how there is even a debate about what the best superhero movie of 2018 was, because Infinity War is just miles ahead of the rest. This movie, just the fact that it is good, if not amazing, when it has so much on its plate. It was the penultimate culmination of 20 or 19 different movies coming together. It brought 30 different superheroes and a couple different storylines that don't really connect very often, and yet it works so well. This movie has such compelling character development. The character dynamics are so fun to watch. This is a funny movie, and the story is so compelling and gripping, and the action is so awesome. Thanos, the villain, is by far the best villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or at least in the movies, or actually in the whole universe probably. The CGI for Thanos is breathtaking. It's insane how cool or how realistic Thanos looks when he's a big purple guy with a scrotum for a chin. It is insane. His motivation is completely different from the comics, and it is completely improved from the comics. He is just such an incredible villain. This movie is just riddled with satisfying moments, incredible, awesome, epic moments, and emotional moments as well. This movie has, I got so emotionally invested in these characters that by the end, when they all, spoiler alert, died, it was not only a shock, but it was pretty emotional, specifically when Spider-Man died. That is one of the saddest movie deaths I have ever seen. I've watched this movie like 8 times, and it's just so emotional every single time. This movie is practically perfect, and it's by far the best movie of not only 2018, but probably ever, at least superhero movie. So I will give Avengers Infinity War a 9.9 out of 10. So that is my list. Let me know your list in the comments down below. And if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.